let me ask you, now that we have a Brexit deal, vaccines being rolled out, stimulus agreed in the U.S., isn't it time to sell?
Morning, Matt, and season's greetings. Yeah, I mean, it certainly on the Brexit deal, it does feel to me like a buy the rumour, sell the fact event. The reality of what's been signed is that, as you've kind of hinted at there, it doesn't really necessarily take away some of the major issues that might face the UK economy, and certainly there will still be disruption. In the long term, I don't think that's a massive issue. I think the economy can adjust, but short term, a lot has been priced recently. Certainly, if you look at sterling, 20 points off the lows on cable suggests that a lot of that good news is already in the price. In terms of the more broad environment, I mean, you can go broke very quickly wanting to continue selling this almost parabolic market. Ultimately, I think valuations are over their skis here. I think there's a lot of good news, if not all the good news, if not too much good news priced. But one has to be cautious when, sentiment and consensus is so strong as it is currently.
Yeah, I mean, animal spirits basically driving these markets. How do you gauge when that sort of thing turns around, James?
In the rearview mirror, Matt, to be honest, you never can tell until you sort of look back and go, oh, yeah, that was it. That was the high. That was the turning point. I don't even think we can merely state that this is animal spirits necessarily. I just think a confluence of factors, some of which are fundamental in nature, and you've described them already, things like stimulus deals being signed. But others is just the nature and the structure of markets and the dominance on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis of these more systematic, technical trading strategies which don't take account of valuation in the way a normal investor would. Merely they buy rising prices, and that just contributes to this massive amount of momentum. And obviously the increasing switch from active to passive and the concentration of certainly the US stock market, all of these things become a kind of juggernaut that can just keep pushing markets further and further away from fair value. One of my favorite charts for the US is just looking at the S&P 500 against the Bureau of Economic Analysis's total economy profit series. And, that's been diverging since 2014. So fighting that on a fundamental basis is very difficult.
Where do you see, or do you see, James, a rotation? I mean, we have some equity indexes that are overvalued, as we were just showing in that chart, some that are truly lagging, the FTSE being one of those. Are investors going to start looking for cheaper valuations?
Yeah, I mean, towards the end of this year, that's definitely become one of the narratives. I think the problem is when you kind of talk in broad brush value versus growth sort of language, there are reasons for many of the individual stocks and many of the geographic regions or subsectors being cheap at this stage. What we've seen has been a dramatic negative economic shock at a time where my judgment was the global economy was end of cycle and very fragile anyway. And so that combination means that, yes, there should be some cheapness to stocks which have been most dramatically affected by the prevailing environment. So there are reasons for that cheapness. And I think the other side of the coin is that really, in order to engage in that rotation, you have to sell the tech juggernauts. And again, that's standing in front of a moving train at the moment. I think most of their valuations are crazy, to put it pejoratively. But again, fighting that has been very difficult. But that doesn't preclude finding areas where there is value and there are high-quality companies that one can attach oneself to. Some of those are in Europe. I certainly think the UK is a good long-term play because the short-term and most recent past has been a lot of negative news for the UK. And what I see is a flexible economy with a strong rule of law and strong institutions, which has shown its ability to reinvent itself through a long period of history. And I think the UK can continue to prosper into the future. I just think that the near-term challenges are pretty high, and that's putting people off. So I do think there is long-term value certainly in the UK. Yeah.